Today I want to give you a basic overview of the IRB. We're going to cover the following. What is the IRB? What kind of research needs IRB oversight? A brief history of human subjects protections. What if you want to submit a proposal? And who can help you with your proposal? First of all, what is the IRB? IRB stands for Institutional Review Board for Human Subjects Research. The IRB at Brockport is composed of faculty, staff, and community members from a variety of diverse backgrounds, including academic, research, and cultural. The IRB reviews and approves research, including human participants at the College of Brockport. While the primary goal of any IRB is to ensure the protection of human subjects in research, we also see ourselves in a teaching role. Most students and some faculty and staff have never submitted IRB proposals before. We offer resources, trainings, and one-on-one guidance. Most importantly, we want students, staff, and faculty to do research. We just want you to do it safely and to follow the federal guidelines so that everyone is protected. You, the participants, and our institution. Only certain types of research need IRB approval and oversight. To understand why the IRB would need to approve and oversee your research project, you'll need to know some definitions and a little history. For IRB purposes, the terms human subjects and research have definitions provided by the federal government. Human subject means a living individual about whom an investigator conducting research obtains data through intervention or interaction with the individual or identifiable private information. If you've ever conducted an interview for a project, you have interacted with human subjects. But simply interacting with someone doesn't necessarily mean it qualifies as human subjects research for IRB purposes. You need to be asking for personal information, such as the participants' opinions or experiences. Even then, it might not be considered research by the IRB. It can depend on how you're collecting the information and what you'll do with the information once you have it. Now, here's the federal definition of research. Research means a systematic investigation designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. In other words, a project meets the federal definition of research if it is conducted with the intention of drawing conclusions that can be applied to other circumstances or creating general explanations of what has happened in the past or what will happen in the future. For example, if I ask you about your experiences completing a research project, I cannot reasonably draw conclusions about all student researchers. However, if I survey a cross-section of 50 or 200 or even 1,000 student researchers, I may be able to use that data to make generalizations and draw conclusions about the experiences of student researchers as a whole. Motive also matters. If a survey is being given to improve the internal workings of an organization or just for fun, it's not considered human subjects research under the federal definition. Here are a few examples of actual studies that may or may not qualify as human subjects research per the federal definition. Read through them to determine whether or not they qualify based on the definitions you have. Please pause the video while you do this. Okay, let's see how you did. Testing with 200 kids to determine whether they prefer to eat 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows in 10 minutes. Yes, this is actually a classic psychology experiment. It is considered an interaction, and the results can be generalized. A survey given by Old Navy to determine how your experience was during your last shopping trip. No, this is known as market research. It is not being done for general knowledge, and they are not collecting any identifiable private information. Marketing, advertising, or public relations efforts such as this one have the goals of promoting a product, service, or idea. Interviews conducted with Brockport professors about the history of adaptive physical education at Brockport. No, this does not involve private information and is not generalizable. It's only about a particular place, Brockport. A survey given to suspected shoplifters at a police station to assess their motives for shoplifting. Yes, this is a study where the goal is to draw conclusions or to generalize. A study done with one 7th grade student to see whether they do better on paper and pencil tests or computer-based tests. Not in this case. In most types of research, you cannot generalize about one person. However, if you did this study with 100 students, you might be able to draw some conclusions about 7th graders and test taking. Watching online videos of tennis players and analyzing their grunts when they hit the ball. Yes, but you wouldn't need to get the player's consent because the information is publicly available. Asking tennis players to come in and play tennis so you can observe and record their grunts when they hit the ball. Definitely. You are working directly with human subjects here. And yes, those last two studies are real ones. In order to run any of the studies we just talked about that qualify as human subjects research, there are some guidelines researchers have to follow, including stating that they are doing research and asking for explicit permission to gather and use the information that you provide. In other words, they are not supposed to use any data you provide without your agreeing to its use. This wasn't always the case, though. Here's a brief history of human subjects protections in the US. Although human subjects research protections were discussed post-World War II, the federal government did not provide any oversight over human subjects research until the 1970s. In the mid to late 1970s, a group of legislators and researchers formatted ethical guidelines to protect human participants in research. Together, they came up with the Belmont Report, which lays out 3 core principles for conducting human subjects research in an ethical manner. Respect for persons, allowing individuals to enter into research voluntarily and with adequate information. This is called informed consent. Informed consent is at the heart of ethical research. People have to join a research project voluntarily, and this means they can always voluntarily quit it as well. This also applies to individuals who can't consent for themselves. They are required to have a representative consent for them. Beneficence, maximizing benefits and minimizing risk or harm to individuals. This means that researchers can't expose a few people to harm or risk, even if a lot of people stand to benefit. There are risky research projects, especially medical ones. But then we go back to the first principle, respect for persons. If a participant completely understands the risks and there are possibly maximum benefits, the research can likely move forward. Justice. Consider who should receive the benefits of research and who will bear its burdens. This is often an issue of social justice. For example, doing research on prisoners or on people in poverty or on your employees simply because they are convenient populations is not acceptable. Some populations need extra protections put into place to make sure they aren't being taken advantage of. Before the Belmont Report and other oversight were put into place, there were a number of studies that did take advantage of human subjects and would have blatantly violated the Belmont Report had it been in place. You've probably heard of some of them. Please pause the video after each description and take a moment to determine which Belmont principles would have been violated in each case. The Tuskegee study. The participants were 600 African American males who were told they were being treated for bad blood, although the study was actually to see what would happen if syphilis went untreated. They were not offered a cure when it became available in 1947 and were not offered the option to quit the study. For compensation, they were offered free medical exams, free meals, and free burial insurance. Which Belmont principles would this study have violated? All 3. Respect for persons, since they did not enter into the research with adequate information. Beneficence, since it did not minimize the risk or harm to individuals. And justice, because the population chosen was specifically one that was taken advantage of due to their level of education and poverty. U.S. military chemical experiments. The participants were 60,000 enlisted soldiers of different racial backgrounds who were exposed to mustard gas and other chemical agents. They were told to participate as a direct military order. Which Belmont principles would this study have violated? Respect for persons, since they did not enter into the research voluntarily, and beneficence, as the level of harm to participants was definitely not minimized, and in fact, the level of harm was not known. It would have violated the justice guideline as well, since the soldiers were bearing the burden of this research because they were a convenient population and were not able to refuse due to their status. The Milgram experiment on obedience to authority. The participants were 40 men who were recruited for a study of memory and learning, although the study was actually to see if they would follow directions given by an authority figure. The participants were designated as either teachers or learners. Each teacher was asked to administer electric shocks to the learner. What the participants did not know was that the learner was actually an actor and the so-called shocks were fake. Nonetheless, study participants, the teachers, were willing to administer what they thought were stronger and stronger electric shocks, including potentially lethal shocks when asked to do so by someone they perceived to be an authority figure. Even when participants requested to stop the experiment out of concern for the learner, they were told to continue. All 40 of the teachers continued to give what they thought were shocks up to 300 volts, and 25 of them up to the max of 450 volts. You can find a number of videos online, both of the original experiment and of more modern reconstructions. There is an excellent and rather shocking 2-minute video of the original experiment on YouTube. Which Belmont principles would this study have violated? Primarily beneficence, as the nature of this study did not minimize psychological harm to the participants, but also respect for persons, as participants were told to continue despite asking to stop the experiment. Even now, there are some gray areas regarding what constitutes research and how much oversight it needs, including, in 2012, Facebook mood manipulation study, where Facebook changed the news feeds of almost 700,000 users for a week, either by adjusting positive posts or negative posts that showed up in their feeds, and then used an algorithm to see which Facebook users were more positive or negative in their own new posts. Facebook said this was market research. Facebook users said it was emotional manipulation. If this study were determined to be human subjects research, which Belmont principles would it have violated? Respect for persons, due to a lack of informed consent process, and justice, again due to a convenient population. And you've probably heard about the researcher who sold personal information he'd collected on Facebook for an approved study, which is another ethical issue altogether. In 2015, a UPenn fatigue study for first-year medical residents required first-year residents to work up to 30 hours straight beyond the current rule of 16 hours to see how it would affect patient care and residents' learning. Residents were not able to opt out of the program, and patients weren't informed. If this study were determined to be human subjects research, which Belmont principles would it have violated? All three. Primarily respect for persons, since participants did not enter into this research voluntarily, and beneficence, as it did not minimize risk or harm to the participants. Previous research has shown that mistakes tend to go up in frequency with lack of sleep. It would also violate justice, since the participants could not opt out without being dropped from the residency program. Locally, a Rochester startup is working on a solution to misdiagnosing skin disease in people of color by building a database of what disease should look like on all skin colors. Experts say part of the reason for elevated rates of misdiagnosis among non-white patients is that doctors are not familiar with what diseases look like on people whose skin color falls on the dark end of the spectrum that they use to categorize skin types, since most research has been done on people with lighter skin. This is clearly an issue of social justice within research. So the IRB will not allow you to do unethical, dangerous research. That's a given. But what kind of preparation do you need to be a PI or principal investigator, lead researcher on a project? First, you need to complete City Human Subjects Research Training Basic course. If you are a student PI, you will need to complete the Students in Research module as well. That will be your first step if you want to submit a proposal, and the basic course may be required by more than one of your classes. You'll learn about human subjects research in depth. It's free, it's online, and you can stop and start it when you want. It takes 2 to 3 hours. The certification lasts 3 years, and then it can be renewed. The link and directions are on the Brockport IRB website. Then contact the IRB office to discuss whether your project needs IRB oversight. If you email the office with a clear description of your project, you may discover that your research does not fall under the purview of IRB, or that the project you thought needed full board review needs an expedited review instead, which can be a quicker process. Determine a timeline. When do you want to conduct your research? You need to take into account that it takes an average of 4 weeks for a proposal to be approved by the IRB. Review the IRB website, especially the proposal guidance section. There's a lot of information about rules, guidelines, and the review process on the website. Go over it before you start and go back to it while you're working on your proposal. All this information is meant to help guide you in completing every section of the proposal. Consider making an appointment with the IRB compliance officer to ask questions before you start. This can help with the process as well. Most importantly, do not start any active recruitment or data gathering until you have official IRB approval. Last, who can help? Your research advisor is the first line of defense here. Hopefully, by the time you turn in a proposal, you will have turned in several drafts to your advisor already, and it will be in pretty good shape. In fact, as a student, you need a signature from your advisor before you can submit your project to the IRB. After that, you'll hear back from our office with feedback. Depending on how much risk your study presents to participants, the feedback may come from one or more different members of the IRB, but the communication will all come directly from this office. You will receive notifications by email. You can meet with a member of the IRB office or with a board member to discuss the feedback, get one-on-one help. Please remember that the IRB office wants you to do research and we are available to help. If you're interested in doing a project that may need IRB approval, please reach out to the IRB office. And whether or not you end up needing to submit your proposal to the IRB, good luck with your research.